Well, good morning, students and parents. Thank you all for joining us today. It's 11 U.S. Central Time. I am your host, Stephanie Chen. We have a very special treat with us this Saturday. James and Alina are no stranger to use Kim on Zoom. Yay! They will be presenting a topic that's both exciting and deeply relevant to many of you. In their presentation, you will have the chance to hear valuable Christian perspective on dating that can enrich your relationship and provide guidance for your future. Without further ado, please join me in giving a warm welcome to James and Alina Wu and their topic, Winning in Dating, Key Tips for Successful Courtship. The floor is all yours, James and Alina.
Yay. All right. Thank you so much for that warm intro, Stephanie. We're really glad to be here. I see, hi, Angel. I see some of you guys coming on camera. It's a little scary sometimes, even for us, when we look at a screen of all faceless people. So if you ever want to turn on your camera, that'll be nice too. I feel like I only see Angel's face right now. So I think I'm just talking to Angel. But anyway, and there's Kayla. Okay, nice to see you too. Okay, it's nice to see some faces. All right, so before we get started, I'm just going to open us up with a quick word of prayer, and then James is going to introduce us a little bit so you kind of know who we are. Just bow our heads. Dear Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for this opportunity to be here with all of the youth today. Thank you for giving us this time that's set apart that we can just process what James and I have learned together and share with them and be able to learn more about relationships and ways that we can be successful in this. And ultimately, I just ask that everyone's hearts will be open here, that our hearts will be open to share as well, and that this conversation will be pleasing to you. Thank you, Father. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So like Stephanie had said, our topic is winning in dating. I think, for us, dating was a very interesting process. We learned a lot about each other, but also ourselves. And, understanding for y'all, some of y'all are maybe in, 7th grade, so maybe it's a little early, but some of y'all are maybe, in high school, and maybe dating is something that y'all are, either thinking about or maybe even doing right now. And so what Alina and I wanted to do is just based on our learning and what we've learned about ourselves and each other in the process, so just to be able to share a little bit of our experience with you so that when you guys do embark on your dating journey, that hopefully it's a healthier and more successful process that is less hurtful, but also good for both you and the people who you'll be meeting. So a bit about ourselves. We started dating in 2021, and then we got married in 2023. So maybe these days, getting married in 2 years is a little quick, but we feel like we learned a lot about each other, a lot about ourselves, and it's been a great journey so far. We also have a dog named Nina, and we are actually expecting our first kid, a daughter, in December. So
I'm already pregnant. You can't tell because I'm sitting down, but my stomach is.
And some things that are not on this slide about us is, you'll probably be able to tell throughout this presentation as you get to know us more and more, but we're very different people. Alina's very extroverted, very warm. She's really great at hosting people. I'm a lot more introverted. I'm a numbers and Excel sheet and math kind of person. And so, oh yeah, and so what we do for work, I am a financial analyst. I work in an oil and gas company. So I'm in Excel spreadsheets and numbers all day long. And Alina, you want to share about what you do?
Yeah, he also majored in finance and at UT Austin, right? So some people that might be from Texas here. So you go to Austin, you want to major in finance.
It's a good school.
Talk to James, yeah. For me, I'm the complete opposite. I was a communication journalism major, and I'm definitely more on the people side, English writing side. I started off my career in business sales, but now I work in full-time ministry. So that's a whole nother story if you guys ever want to know about that. But long story short, we are very different.
And these personality differences are different strengths and weaknesses. They'll come into play later on in this presentation as we share a bit about ourselves. And so ultimately, like I mentioned before, we're here to help you guys enter courtship with a successful and a healthy mindset. I'm really hoping that y'all are able to have godly, healthy experiences, but also that the people you meet and the people you interact with, that they'll also be able to be blessed through y'all as well. So really looking to give y'all some good guidelines that will be helpful for y'all. And then the last thing about today that we did want to talk about is, we want to know what y'all think. It's not just us talking to a screen. We're really hoping that we get some feedback. We get to learn a bit about y'all. And so of course, no judgment. We're just here to share with each other, to talk with each other, and get to know one another. So we're really looking forward to y'all's participation. And on that note, to get started on participation, we thought a great warm-up exercise would be to have you all rate your day so far, 1 through 5. 1 is being, oh, it's a terrible morning, I woke up really bad and it's a bad day. Or 5 is like, hey, I woke up really happy, it's a great day. Maybe you already went out, played some sports, something like that.
Put it in the chat box.
Yeah, put it in the chat
Have all
box.
the responses in the chat box.
Yeah.
So it's
And to start, my day, I'd say it's a 4. The morning's been great, but last night, I think Alina had a nightmare. And so she kind of woke me up at like 4 or 5 a.m. And so other than that, that has been a great day. So that's why for me, it's a 4.
I don't see anything in the chat box. We have like what, 24 people? I expect to see at least 24 responses. 1 to 5. How's your day? Just put a number in there. James, you can start off. You can put a 4.
4 in there. Okay. Let me put a 4 in here.
Let's see.
Let's see.
Everyone's
3.
keyboard's working. We have a 2, a 3, 5,
3.6.
Sounds
Okay,
like someone's
Caleb.
GPA. 3.6, a 4, 1.5. Oh, sorry, Sean. Hopefully your day will get better. Any other responses? We have a 3, we have a 2, 1.5. So we have a really wide range of people. They don't tell me, but I think around 3.7.
Okay.
Okay. I like the precision. You can tell some people have different personality types too. They're like very precise.
Some of you all are probably more like me, putting decimals.
Yeah, when I ask James 1 to 10, how's the food? He never gives me like a solid number. It always has a percentage to it, like 3.7, you know, so the personality. All right, I think we're pretty good, pretty warmed up.
Go ahead and get started.
Okay, so first question of the day, first real question I'm gonna ask you guys is, have you ever thought about what you are looking for? How do you know what to look for in dating? The first question you should always ask is, do you even know what you're looking for? Right. So I have on the screen some different prompts for thought. Of course, this is not all encompassing. These are not the only things you should be looking for when you're thinking about who to date, who to marry, right? Some people even have entire lists, but this is just to kind of get you started. What you guys can put in the chat box are just some answers to these questions, maybe personality traits, like do you prefer someone who's extroverted or introverted, much more subjective, maybe values, like someone who's family oriented, someone who's generous, or maybe even physical traits, you know, like somebody who is tall or short, or someone who's very lean or very built. And again, these are just prompts for thoughts. Think way bigger picture. If you have a whole list, just share a couple of those traits. So put it in the chat box, 1, 2, or 3 different traits that you have when you're thinking about what you're looking for in like a other half or a spouse or something like that. Hi, Ying, I can see you on screen. I like seeing some people's faces. All right, so while you guys are responding, no one's put anything yet. Everyone's a little shy. It's okay. It's a little intimidating, but again, when we put these in this, oh, hi, Owen, I see you. When we put this in the chat box, there's no judgment, no judgment on your answers. It's really just to kind of get some ideas flowing, just to kind of get some processing started so we can kind of hear where you guys are at.
And when you share, it can be something as simple as someone who has an easy smile. Right?
Yeah. Someone who's extroverted, because you're introverted, Chelsea.
Extroverted.
Jonathan also wants someone who's extroverted. Grace says, has to share generally the same views as me. Someone who's consistent and reliable. Those are good character traits, you know? Someone who's consistent, does what they say, someone who's not gonna like flake out last minute.
Someone who's healthy.
Healthy. Yeah. Lydia, 9th grade. Definitely, that's good. That was on my list too. I'll hear a little bit from you guys. I'll share what was on my list. Someone who will listen and make me laugh and is kind. It's good. Good listener. James is a really good listener. I think he's better than me. Sometimes I talk too much.
It's because I don't talk too much.
Let's see. Someone who's, oh, I missed that one. Someone who's caring, funny, and fun to be around. Personality depends on the mood. Someone who's more extroverted, shares generally the same values, and is healthy. Yeah, maybe we have some introverts in this room, so then they like the extroverts.
Someone who doesn't do things at the last minute, so they plan ahead and they think.
Tristan is only in 6th grade and he is thinking ahead. He's like, it doesn't matter. Like, I need someone who's a good planner. It's good. All right, there's some pretty good answers. Let's see if anyone has any other thoughts. Anyone?
Last minute thought.
Someone who's a Christian from Ruth,
Mhm.
definitely for beliefs, what you believe in. Any others? That's it for now. Okay, we got some hearts on the Christian one, so I guess some people agree with that. All right, so just kind of going into this thought a little bit, I'll share a bit of what my list was before I dive a little deeper. My list, so before James and as you'll see, we're going to kind of share a bit of our story as we kind of give our answers and our experiences, right? Oh, does Nicole have a question? I see a hand being raised, or is that an accident? That could be an accident. Okay, if you have a question, just put it in the chat box. All right, so for me, it's very interesting. Before we actually met, I had written in my diary, a journal. I was thinking about what am I looking for in someone that I would like to marry. And I actually read out an entire list, and I wrote it in the form of a prayer to God. It wasn't, I think the thing about lists is they can be a double-edged sword. For some people, they think, oh, I want to know exactly what I'm looking for, and so I'm not going to look at anybody else. And that's not really for me what I think the good purpose of a list is. For me, the reason why I wrote down a list in the form of a prayer was because I wanted to be intentional. That's why I'm asking this question, so we can be intentional about what we're looking for. Because if you don't know what you're looking for, then anyone that comes along, you're like, do they like me? Oh, I guess they like me, so I'll like them back. It can just be very unintentional, go with the wind, whatever goes. When you kind of know what you're looking for, you can be intentional in what you're looking for. So for me on that list, I had, let's see, I had, as a Christian, I put loves God, someone who's kind to others. I think you guys wrote that too. Like, for example, there's service people like waitresses or people that are working in the service industry, someone that can't do anything for them. I wanted to see how that person will respond to them. Would they still be kind to them? Or are they only just nice to me? Or even friends, are they good friends to other people? Someone who enjoys similar food as me, someone who's complementary in my weaknesses. So I wrote someone who's more detail oriented, because I tend to be very big picture. I think about the future. I forget who wrote in there that someone who likes to plan ahead. Like, I like to plan ahead, So I wanted someone who also is good at planning ahead, but is also good at looking at the details as well. And then somebody who cares about their health, somebody who's family oriented. And when I said health, is because I want to make sure that, we're just taking good care of the bodies that God gave us. You didn't have to be a bodybuilder, but someone who's healthy, right? Someone who's family oriented, because I care a lot about my family. Someone who likes dogs, because I already had Nina at that time. And somebody who is proactive and a hard worker. Now, I'm not going to give you all of the list, but these are generally the things that I had on there. And as you can see on that list, they're not necessarily things like he has to be 6'2" or he has to, be exactly in this kind of job or industry. But I think for me, what I was praying for was a lot more characteristics that knowing myself and knowing what I was looking for, I just lifted up with prayer to God. But they weren't like absolutes. I didn't say, hey, if he doesn't have these things, then I'm just going to write him off completely. But these are really just the small desires of my heart, knowing myself and what I was looking for. And as I lifted that into prayer, my prayer was really just, dear God, you know exactly what I need. You know what's best for me. These are some things that I would like, but I entrust the results into your hands. So I do want to encourage you guys, if you haven't thought about this, what you're looking for yet, maybe write it out, think about it, process it. But in that process, don't necessarily think that you have to put someone in a box entirely, or say that if they don't meet exactly this criteria, that's not what you're going to go for. For me, somehow it just turned out that when I met James, it was after we were dating, I went back to my journal and I looked at it and I realized, wow, he matches off every single thing on my list and more. It was so crazy. Like, it was every single thing, detail oriented, and he's good with all the things that I'm not good at, honestly. Very proactive, very go-getter. And like, for example, we would go to a restaurant, and then after we're done eating, you have the napkins. His napkin would be a nice little square, and mine would be like a bunch of cabbage on the side. So he's very detail oriented, very neat. So things like that. Definitely able to grow together as well. But yeah, I guess again, back on that thought of when you're writing your list, for me, after I wrote that list, I wasn't necessarily going out and seeking every single person or being really stressed about finding that person. After I wrote that list and gave it to God, I just continued serving in church, continued hanging out with my friends, trying to be a good friend, continuing to grow my relationship with God. And God just brought James along in my small group later on that year. So all is to say, have your list, be intentional, but don't feel stressed like you have to necessarily search for that exact person. I think keep it in prayer, have good relationships, but see where God brings you in the right timing. Oh, let's respond to some of these chats really fast. Someone wrote, Chelsea had a question. If someone cheats, should you forgive them or break up? Ooh, that is a good question. Let's table that for like the end questions. If we want to put that in there.
Sure, we can put that
Let's
together.
table that. James will make sure we don't forget.
Let me write this down so I remind myself at the very end.
Yeah, we have some stuff to get there, so I want to make sure we get there everything, but that's a really good question. I hope that didn't happen to you, Chelsea, but if it did, definitely it's a really good topic to talk about. All right, you want to continue, James?
Yep. You have to there we go.
All right.
All right, so the next question is really, do you know yourself? Now, this is more of a hypothetical question, just for you to think about, because high level, the better you know yourself, the better what you need, the areas that you could grow in, and what your values are, then the more accurate and the better you'll be at recognizing, hey, is this other person who I'm thinking about dating, are they a right fit for me or not? Just a bit about myself personally. Before dating Alina, I thought I was fine. I had a job. I'm good with numbers. People at my work liked me. And generally speaking, my room is not too messy. My apartment, I wash the dishes, so everything's put in its place. So for what I knew of myself, I thought I was pretty great. But after talking to Alina, getting to know her better, I realized there are a lot of things I didn't know about myself. I think one of the biggest examples is because Alina is really in tune with her emotions, she's able to talk about how she feels. That comes very naturally to her. But something I didn't know about myself is that even though it seems like I'm making the right decisions and I'm doing the right things, whenever Alina would ask me, oh, how do you feel? I wouldn't really know what to say. I remember one time I opened my phone, I looked up a list of feeling words, and then I would pick those words to help me kind of communicate to her what I was feeling. And so I think over time, one thing I've learned about myself that I didn't already know is that when it comes to communication, with sharing with other people and connecting, that's something that I could definitely grow in. And so that's one of the biggest lessons that I think I learned about myself. Yeah. So definitely, whether you're dating already or maybe you're looking to date in a couple years time, definitely think about, who are you, right? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What do you value? What do you care about? And as you think about these things and as you form a better picture of who you really are, then it'll help you kind of figure out, hey, is this person or is that person a better fit for me?
So all this to say, as you guys are writing your list, some of these things can be very subjective. Some said introverted, extroverted, funny. Some people like serious people. But I do have to give some of these lessons that I've learned over the years, because I want to make sure that, you guys don't have to make the same mistakes I did and things that people or my parents told me that I found very helpful. So there's some universal principles that are maybe not as subjective as some of the ones we talked about. The top three that came to mind was their character, their family, and their beliefs. So going into character, what do I mean by character? Very different from personality. Again, not talking about extroverted, funny, or even somebody who's easygoing or plans ahead. What I mean by character is, are they consistent with what they say, with what they do? For example, when they say, hey, I really like to take care of my health and I'm really interested in, being healthy. Do you actually see that in the way they live out their lives? Another thing of character that's important to know is if they like you, of course that person will be nice to you. But the question is, how do they treat people who can't do anything for them? For example, if they're, like I said, with a server or a friend who can't do anything back for them, are they still a loving person, or are they just, mean to everybody else or only nice to you? It makes you feel very special with people like that. But in reality, when you get married, sometimes they won't like you or you won't like each other. So how they treat each other, even those they don't like, is very important. Something that really stood out to me for James was just how considerate he was as a person when we were dating. Even now, he's still sometimes is quite more considerate in certain areas than I am. For example, when people have allergies, again, just random friends in small group will be like, hey, I remember this person had an allergy. Let's remember we don't bring this food for them, you know, or he remembers, hey, this person broke their arm. Let's make sure they don't have to carry anything. So that's just him being more detail oriented. Not everyone is exactly caring in that way, but I think looking for people that, again, have a caring personality, regardless of who they're talking to, I think is a big part of character as well. Because again, there'll be times when you're fighting, if you guys are dating or getting married, and how they treat people they feel like they don't like, that's also how they might treat you in those times. When the going gets tough, you know, what comes out? Are they people that have really bad tempers? Are they people that are going to just yell and physically fight? Or are they people that are able to temper their emotions and know how to process things in a more mature way? But, you know, and lastly, growth oriented, you know, all of these things might seem a little far-fetched, and you might not even be there yourself. You might be saying, hey, but I'm the person with the bad temper. I'm the person who's not nice to everybody, but only nice to people I like. So maybe you're not even there yet either, right? And that's okay. But I think the key is this other person and are you both growth oriented, and do you guys care about growing together? I think that's a really important quality to have. So again, this is not to be a perfectionist and say, if they don't have every single one of these character traits, they're not the one. But it's saying, hey, are they interested in growth as a person? Are they humble to learn? And like James was saying, are you humble to learn as well? Another second one, it's very important, universal principle, is family background. A lot of times you might think romantically, hey, I'm not marrying the family, I'm just marrying this person, or I'm not dating the family, I'm just dating this person. But you know, if you're in the mindset that you want to date or court to lead to marriage, I will tell you, as someone who is married, who has a lot of married friends that recently got married, you do marry the family. You're not just marrying the person. And what do I mean by that? I mean, honestly, like, they're not even talking about like cultural as in Chinese, American, etc. values, but I mean cultural as an individual family culture. Every family has a culture. Do you guys eat together at dinner time? Do you guys go shopping together? Do your parents, when you're little, read bedtime stories to you? Or when you're older, do they talk with you? You know, things like this. Families have their own individual cultures. And when you guys merge your lives together, you'll be creating your own family and your own culture, but you'll be bringing a lot of subjective values from your previous families into that relationship as well. And, you know, in the future, what's relationship with grandma and grandma going to be like if you have kids, you know, or what's the relationship with the in-laws or holidays going to be like? So even more so than just the immediate person of their family member, you do really marry into the family and a lot of the values that they have. But again, you know, some people come from, you may have a more difficult family life background, or they might, and that's not saying that you just don't marry them because they have a hard family background, not like that at all. But I think it's understanding, again, where you're coming from, where they're coming from, and what things you guys might have to work through together as you're thinking about creating your own family in the future. And again, for people like maybe Tristan, 6th grade, I see you on screen, that's why I'm calling you out. Maybe it's a little bit far for you, you know, to think that far. But I think that if you start, I think, was it Tristan that said he likes people that plan ahead? Maybe it was, but Tristan, plan ahead, you know, think ahead, you know, as you're thinking about dating, it's not something that's just, oh, I just like her, she likes me, or I like him, he likes me, but think about it with the end goal in mind, you know, and that includes family, that includes character. And the last one I want to talk about is belief. Just because James and I are Christians and we're talking about biblical principles, I'm not going to assume that all of you are Christians or that all of you have the same beliefs. So, I mean, just from a very pragmatic standpoint, what do you believe in? And what does this other person believe in? In my dating, back when I was dating, I've met some guys that would say, oh, you know, we can have different beliefs. It doesn't matter. Like, I can be Buddhist, you can be Christian, I can be Hindu, it doesn't matter. But I think one thing that I've learned through marriage and through talking with others more in depth is beliefs really do matter. And why is that? A lot of different reasons, but the main ones that I will start with is when you have those different beliefs that shape your worldview, you might have a different viewpoint of why you would get married, right? So what is the meaning of marriage? Why would you even get married? Oftentimes this comes down to our beliefs, our fundamental beliefs. You know, as a Christian, we'll talk about this later, why we believe marriage is important, but I have certain viewpoints about marriage. But if someone has, like, let's say they're atheist, they might have a completely different viewpoint. So if you're trying to, let's say, create or do a school project together, or you're like, for example, if you're doing a school project together, have a goal together, but you guys have different blueprints or you have different definitions of what the project is, then how can you succeed? Because you're both going to be going in different directions. Does that make sense? It's a bit of a deeper concept, but the idea is with your beliefs, they really shape what direction you're going in. So if you guys are both going in different directions, it'll be really hard to be united and work together. And again, this is maybe a little bit too far ahead for some people, but again, just planning in the future. Think about when you have kids as well, how you want to raise them. If one person wants to raise them as a Christian, one person wants to raise them as a Hindu, again, it just makes it a lot harder. Marriage and relationships, I will tell you, there's a lot of good times, but there's also a lot of challenges. And so that's just adding one more really big challenge into the mix that can make it so hard to be successful in your dating and marriage relationship. So 3 universal principles. I won't go into any more. I'll let James take the next one. Oops, wrong way. All right. So, sorry, my part too. What are some signs of a healthy relationship? Okay, we'll be a little faster to make sure we're not too cut on time, but let's put some thoughts into the chat box. Some people said they liked responsible. Oh, 3 people liked responsible.
That's from before.
So that's the previous question. But for this new one, what are some signs of a healthy relationship? What do you think? I shared a lot, so I want to hear from you guys. Strong connections, good communication, togetherness.
Okay.
Let's go, Caleb.
Respect. That's very important.
You respect each other. Yes. Mutual respect is huge. Can communicate well. Maybe some people have already talked about relationships. Generous with each other. Infrequent quarrels. That's interesting. We can talk about that one. Share the burden. What burdens do you have, Caleb?
Doing dishes. Doing dishes is a huge
Yes,
burden.
that is definitely know how to split up tasks. Good understanding.
Love.
Strong connections, respect and responsibility. Donate, so someone who's charitable.
Generous.
Trying to help them. So I guess maybe what you're saying, Lydia, is like people that can grow together, that you can help each other.
Or maybe if you're sick, they'll help you and take care of you.
That's pretty good. Any other thoughts? Okay, I think those are the most we have. If you want to add them, just keep adding them to the chat as we talk, and I'll pick them out. My quick thought on the infrequent quarrels. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about that. But I do think that conflict can be a good thing, but it depends how you deal with the conflict and how you manage the conflict is what makes conflict good or bad, right? Because conflict can sometimes help you with understanding the other person better. You're like, hey, it's a misunderstanding or a miscommunication. But again, it depends on how you deal with that conflict. That can make conflict good or bad.
There's also a chance, I will say, if you have a lot of conflict, but you deal with them healthily and you deal with them in a godly way, you may end up having less conflict in the future.
Yeah, exactly. So like initial conflict, but if you deal with it well, you may have less conflict. That's kind of like our relationship now, right?
It's a journey.
It's a journey, yeah. All right, so we're going to split this slide up. Healthy relationships versus unhealthy relationships. Again, James and I, we would love to talk more with you guys on this, but if we really went into it, it would be, people write entire books on these kind of topics, right? So we're just going to give you guys some overview thoughts, some of the key points that we thought would be really important to know. So for us, healthy relationships, somebody wrote that in there, strong communication, that we put that as one of the first ones because, again, like with conflict or with anything that comes your way, if you're not talking about it, if you're not working on it, then how is the relationship going to go? Every relationship, you have to be able to, there has to be some sort of communication for things to flow. For example, even when you fight, like there might be different ways that you might have conflict. For example, in marriage counseling, they said there's 2 types. There's a rhino and there's a porcupine. The rhino might be someone who is really like sees they feel angry and then they just go for it and they're really loud and explosive. But a porcupine is someone who shuts down. So, there's different ways of communicating, but it's good to know the other person, know how you communicate, and consistently try to work through that together. So that's something for James and I think as we've grown in our relationship, we've learned each other's communication styles and we've learned how to communicate better. And building each other up, growing towards a certain goal together. I talked about that a little bit with beliefs, right? So I think that it's important if you're in a dating relationship or moving towards marriage or even in marriage, that a relationship where you guys have the same goals, so you guys are moving towards in the same direction and building each other up, encouraging each other. I think some people wrote, you're trying to help them, or trying to work together on things. So someone that you can really be a good teammate with as well. Because honestly, in life, you're going to be doing, when you're dating, you're just, going on date, like talking, going on dates, just eating together, a lot of fun. When you get married, someone is a co-dishwasher, co-parent, who's going to mop the floors, who's going to take care of the finances. You're working on projects, things all together all the time. So it's someone that you can work well together, you can build each other up. And then lastly, that question we'll talk about later. Someone cheats on you, do you get back with them or do you give up the relationship? I think that's a breach of trust, right? But I think that a healthy relationship, there really needs to be trust in it. All right, so you take it up. Unhealthy?
So for unhealthy relationships, you may notice on the right side of the screen, it's kind of like the opposite of the left side of the screen. But even though it's the opposite and it may seem obvious that, hey, if these things are good for a healthy relationship and these things must be bad, I think, we think that they're still worth talking about. So of course you have bad communication. Instead of encouraging or building each other up, you're very competitive, or maybe you're always comparing with the other person saying, oh, I did this better than you, and you make them feel smaller or belittled. And then lastly, of course, a lack of trust. So I have a couple examples of these and how they show up in an unhealthy relationship, especially for us. So not growing up, when we started dating, remember how you mentioned how I didn't really know how to talk about how I feel? I had to use a sheet to kind of be able to pick the words to describe how I feel. Well, in the very beginning, we had, when a girl asked, quite a few fights. And a lot of those fights was because I in particular had bad communication. There'd be times when maybe something is a bit off and Alina would ask me, oh, hey, what's going on? And then I'm thinking about it in my head, but because I'm thinking about it in my head, I'm not saying anything.
Have you guys ever done that before?
Yeah.
You're trying to respond and you just
think
nothing comes up.
Yeah, and you're thinking, which is good. But then Alina's sitting there, she's sitting there for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And she's like,
5 minutes.
not 5 minutes.
Not
no.
5 minutes.
But then she's thinking about hey, what's James thinking? Should I be worried? Should I not be worried? Right. So something I've learned over time to improve my communication is whenever I'm thinking, to let her know, hey, I'm thinking, no worries, just give me a second. Or over time, as I've gotten better at talking about myself, it doesn't take me that long to be able to tell her how I feel. So that's one example of my initial bad communication, but with effort and with practice, my communication got better. And so don't let bad communication be the reason why you don't try to grow. Yep. And then another example for competition could be, especially for people who maybe are in the same kind of job or same kind of industry, they can end up competing with each other. But for us, luckily, we have very different jobs. And so I think for us, competition has been less of an issue. However, something I've been learning personally is, whenever Alina's feeling down, how can I kind of talk her through things and encourage her so that at the end of our conversation, she can feel less down and she can feel more encouraged. And she feels like, hey, I do really care about her. I listen to her. And then for lack of trust, I think there were many times, especially when we started dating, because of the bad communication, sometimes I would say something the wrong way. Or sometimes maybe I'm used to hearing things a certain way. And so when Alina tells me something in a different way, I automatically assume, hey, she must be trying to hurt me. Or she might say, hey, since James said it this way, he must be trying to hurt me. And so I think as we learn to know each other better, I think understanding, hey, James doesn't mean it this way, or Alina does not mean it this way, that helps build our trust and makes our relationship healthier over time. And so trust is something that you will build in a relationship, and it's something to always work towards every day.
Do you want to answer that question about the cheating one really fast?
Yeah, the cheating one. So I feel like, and this is where I think our faith and understanding, who is Jesus is really important, because, we are sinners, right? We make mistakes, but God still loves us. But what matters is, do we really know we made a mistake? And are we actually going to repent and change our ways? And so when it comes to the question of cheating, it's very nuanced.
It's very individualized.
Yeah,
I don't think you can make it a blanket.
Yeah, I
rule.
don't think you can say if they cheat, you should never stay with them, or if they cheat, you should always stay with them. I don't think either of those answers is correct. And if you'll have a local church or a pastor I feel like they may be more equipped to give you a good example, but
Specific
example.
counseling, if that's something you're dealing with.
But from me and understanding my faith, if the person who cheats, if they are truly repentant, like you can tell they really are sorry and they do want to change their ways and they really are earnest about it, and you believe you can really rebuild that trust in the relationship, then I would say it's a possibility. But if there's
Not definitely.
not definite, but then if there's just no way you can rebuild the trust, or maybe the person cheated and they're not sorry, or they don't care about it, or they don't
Or if
think
it's a
the
repetitive
trust.
cycle,
Yeah.
something more related to them.
Exactly. Then in
Yeah.
those instances, I think it'd be pretty obvious to say, hey, this is not a good person to be committed to, and they clearly don't love you. So, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of times with cheating, for cheaters, it's not because of the person they cheated on. Like it's nothing wrong with the person who got cheated on. It's usually something within the cheater. You know, maybe they need affirmation, or they need affirmation from like the opposite gender, or they need it. It makes them feel more valued. It makes them feel worthy. Or maybe sometimes it's because they're not getting something out of the current relationship, and they use that as an excuse to go outside of their relationship to find another person or get fulfilled somewhere else. So I think you have to also understand the dynamics of cheating. It's very, very nuanced. And again, it also changes if you guys are in a dating relationship versus a marriage relationship, right? And how long you've been married, all of that kind of all comes into play. Like if you guys are just dating and they're already cheating, then that would be like, okay, like something really big red flag, you know, like that's the time where you're supposed to be most in love or most like infatuated, not in love, infatuated. But I think with marriage, not saying that it's okay if they cheat in marriage, definitely not. But I think because marriage is a lot longer haul, sometimes people go sideways or things can, go left or right. And I think it really depends, like James was saying, on the situation, the heart posture of both people and how you approach it together and where you guys are at. Hope that answers the question a little bit. I know it's not like a definite yes or no, but I think with these kind of situations, you really have to look at the individual situations and what's happening. All right. Okay, my next question for you guys. Have you ever seen a good example of a marriage that made you look forward to getting married? Oops. Okay. And what made that marriage stand out? The question is, why get married anyways, right? So put it in the chat box. Have you ever seen an example of a good marriage that made you look forward to getting married, and what made them stand out? Could be your parents, like a celebrity couple, someone from a book. It's a little bit of a deeper question, so take a little time to think. Let's see, good marriage. Has anyone seen a good marriage before? You can just say my parents, or you can just say my teacher, or my pastor, or my friend's parents. Oh man, maybe no one's, come on. Someone has to have seen a good example of a marriage. It doesn't have to be perfect marriage, but I think a marriage that at least made you look forward to getting married. Someone who had a strong love bond, from Joanne.
You want to share about your friend?
Oh, Lydia shared her pastor. Okay, that's really cool. Lydia in 9th grade. Any others? My parents, from Jennifer. Or any traits that made that good marriage stand out? Someone said a strong love bond, which I think is important, a good bond. No comparison to other marriages, from Sherry. Yeah. Ashley's parents, also a good example. I think that's huge, not comparing your spouse to somebody else, just knowing what you have and being thankful and working with that, because there's no perfect person out there, just like you're not perfect.
Yeah, but the only marriage I've known of is my parents.
Okay, so I think for me, just to answer this question, I was actually going to say my parents too. It was a good example of marriage. What made them stand out to me though, so my dad's actually a pastor, and so you often see pastors, on stage preaching and teaching, and my mom also teaches as well. So they're like on stage, it's like they can seem perfect, but I think at home, that's what really matters. And I think what made them stand out to me is that I saw the consistency of character on stage versus at home. Yes, they are not perfect, definitely not perfect. They're very human, but I saw that they at least strove to live out what they were teaching on stage with what they did at home. And that included the way that they lived out their relationship. You know, if that meant forgiveness, if that meant learning patience, if that meant learning good communication, even if they weren't all the way there yet. So I think having that growth mindset and consistency of character was what really stood out to me. All right, now we're going to ask you guys a little deeper question.
Have you ever seen a bad example of a marriage? And maybe that even makes you scared to get married, right? So, and I can share an example. I don't, how many of y'all know? Okay, that's good, 0. That's great. I don't know how many of y'all know or remember the Will Smith slapping someone during the Oscars, but Will Smith, and I don't even know if they're married anymore, but his, I guess, wife Jada, I think they are an example of a pretty poor, unhealthy marriage. I know there are many times they're on TV doing interviews and Jada was attacking Will Smith, or vice versa. And the way they treated each other off screen or on TV screen was very unhealthy. So that's one example. And so I guess the question ultimately becomes like,
Why should we even get married?
yeah, if you see examples that make you scared to get married, then why should you get married?
So we're going to talk, we're running a little quick on time. We have like 4 minutes left. We're going to try to get through this, but why should we even get married? Oh, Joanne said, hate not listening, choose someone else. Donald Duck and Daisy. Okay, you're fine. All right. But okay, so I think in terms of a worldly perspective of marriage, there's 2 different views. We can say the worldly perspective and maybe the godly or Christian perspective, why marriage is important. From a worldly perspective, and maybe again, maybe like Caleb, you haven't really thought too much about marriage yet. It's a little far in advance, but as you continue through 7th, 8th, 9th grade, 12th grade, you'll start hearing more and more about relationships and marriage. And I think something you might hear a lot in social media or with your friends is that marriage is often seen like a chain and ball perspective. Like once you're married, you're stuck in commitment, and those who are committed are maybe more like they lost out in life. They lose out on all their fun. It's like a chain and ball effect. Or there's that perspective that marriage is meant to make me happy. Marriage is designed to make me happy. Do I make this person happy? Do they make me happy? Have you ever heard in Disney movies and this prince and the prince got together, a prince and the princess, excuse me, got together and they lived happily ever after? Have you all heard that before? Happily ever after, right? But I think the key word there is happily ever after, right? And it's all about their happiness. That's a lot of what the worldly perspective on marriage is. Now, what about a godly perspective?
So from a godly perspective, instead of a chain and ball, a marriage, there's actually a lot of freedom in marriage. And I can give an example real quick. So I remember when I was dating, especially when I was first getting to going on a dinner with someone for the first time, you're always thinking, oh, what should I say? If I say this, are they gonna not like me as much? Or if I say this, are they gonna leave me? Like there's a lot of insecurity, a lot of worry. You're kind of like trapped in your mind, trying to figure out what's right or what's wrong, what to say, what not to say. But then in marriage, because we are married now, we're committed, and we know that I know that I love her, and I know that she loves me as well. I can tell her things that maybe I'd normally be scared to tell anyone else, but I can tell her and I can trust that she'll talk about it with me, she'll work through it with me, and that I can rely and trust on her to be there, to care for me and to help me get through whatever kind of question or issue I'm talking to her about. And so from my point of view and from our experience in marriage, to be able to have someone who you can trust and go to and really be open and be free, right? To share about things that you're worried about, share about things you're excited about, share about your points of view and your opinions. I think that's very freeing. And so that's something that dating and not being committed doesn't give you. And so that's why, from a godly perspective, marriage really is freeing. And then the second point is that instead of being happy, marriage is really designed to make me or make us holy. And as a result, you may end up happier in certain moments. So I think the easiest example I can go to is what I talked about, me learning to communicate better, to share my emotions. Like when I wasn't communicating well, we weren't very happy. But as I started communicating better, being able to tell Alina,
more like Christ in your character.
More like Christ in my character, being able to be more mature. And as that communication got better, as I became more holy through my communication and my maturity, now we fight less. So by extension, you could say we're happier, right? And so something I really experienced is that as we learn and grow in our character, as we mature, then naturally, as a result, you'll have less unhappy moments And then I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking for the end result, which is being happy. But the journey to get there is something that oftentimes we forget. So
Yeah, again, people write entire books about the meaning of marriage. In fact, I'm going to put this in the chat box. So some of y'all, maybe it's a little far in advance, but even if you're in 6th, 7th, 8th, high school, college, this is a great book. The Meaning of Marriage by Tim Keller. All right, I'll just put it in like that. So that's a very good introduction to why should we even get married in the first place from a godly perspective. If any of you are good readers, like to read, definitely recommend that one.
all right. So here's some Bible verses that just kind of talk about or help explain the godly perspective of marriage. So for example, for Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 10, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. And then Ephesians 5:25, husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And lastly, 1 Thessalonians 5:11, therefore encourage one another and build each other up, just as in fact you are doing.
And you can kind of see some of these verses and what we've been talking about. And just kind of tying it all together. Again, so much we could go into this topic of marriage, but I think overall marriage is designed for us to grow. And if we're not growing in life, then what are we doing? If the whole purpose of life is just to eat, drink, be merry, just enjoy life, then it kind of becomes sort of meaningless. What's more than that? So I think what we're saying is ultimately marriage is there to help us grow and grow towards becoming more like Christ. And so for some of you, again, you may not have that relationship with God, or maybe you're still exploring, or maybe you really love God, or you don't know where you're at. What I just want to do is just encourage you to think about it. Why are we here? What are we striving towards? And again, that ties into marriage as well. What is all of this for? So I do want to encourage you guys and just know that y'all are loved, and that there is God who ultimately wants to have that relationship with you. And that's the ultimate relationship out of all of this. But okay, I think that's all we have for today. Do we have any time for questions, Stephanie, or do we just need to wrap up from here? Oh, sorry, I can't. I think the sound got cut off.
Oh, and you're still muted. I
appreciate
think. Try again.
Sorry, do you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah,
A little
I
soft,
think
but
we have
better.
time for question if anybody more questions.
Any questions?
We addressed all the questions from the chat already, right?
Yeah, we did.
We did.
So if no one else has any questions, then what is the
What
oldest
oldest
age?
age?
Tristan's really thinking ahead. Are you planning to get married when you're very old, Tristan? No, that's a good question. I think you can go ahead and answer it.
I don't think there's the oldest age you can get married, although, getting married at different age, like if you get married when you're 60 or 70, I don't really know if having kids is
True,
necessarily right.
what your plans are for marriage.
Depending on when you get married, it may or may not open different opportunities. So that's something to keep in mind. We got married when we were 24, 25.
25, 26, 24, 25.
24, 25, I think. So maybe a little younger end, but not too young or anything like that.
Exactly. Like if you go on the flip side, when you get married, like let's say you're straight out of college, you might just not have as much maturity as you might have when you're a little bit older, so you might have more fights. It might be a little bit more difficult to work through certain things. But I think the question isn't so much about what's the oldest you can get married as it is, how do you know when you found the right one? Because I think that it's not so much about I'm 60 or I'm 50 or I'm 40, but I think it's more like when the right person comes in your life, is this the right person, the person that you want to marry and spend the rest of whatever life you have left,
You don't want to wait to get married just to wait.
Yeah.
Right.
Does that answer your question, Tristan? Good.
Thanks for the question. Here.
Sorry.
Here, let me make the chat bigger.
Grace 8th grade in Washington says, is infidelity in marriage a valid reason for divorce? What if the cheater cheats multiple times, is really sorry, and then goes back to cheating? Ooh, I think, can I say something really fast? So I think it makes me think of, I'm sorry, I can't quote this specific Bible verse right now, but maybe you can look it up for me. The Bible does talk about cheating in marriage, right? And I think one thing that's mentioned is that I think if they're, again, it can get very theological, very specific, and maybe Stephanie wants to talk on that a little bit too. But what my thought is that um, when it comes to that topic, again, back to why does someone cheat? Oftentimes it has something to do with something that's within that person. And like you said, if this is a very specific situation where that person continually cheats multiple times, really sorry, goes back to cheating. It's something with their character, something that's going on within them that I think at that point, when you lose that faithfulness of marriage, I think marriage is all about faithfulness. It's a depiction of your relationship with God, church, and the bride, right? And so if they break that faithfulness, that relationship, I don't think that you have you're not, they already broke their relationships, so you're not necessarily bound to them in that same way before, because they already broke that trust, they already broke that commitment, basically. So they already broke it. So it's not necessarily there. It's up to you if you want to rebuild that. But I think in that specific situation, if they're continually cheating, it's something that's like habitual, it's a pattern, they can't heal from that. I think, again, it really depends on the situation of that person, your relationship, your community, how involved you guys are together and working through that. But I don't think you're tied to that commitment, like you're forced to stay in that marriage.
I would say last thing, if the cheater cheats multiple times, is sorry, but then goes back to cheating,
Are they really
are they
sorry?
really sorry? And I would almost say the answer is definitely no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like they may be actually genuinely sorry in their feelings in that moment, but it's probably something deeper within them, like an insecurity or a need for validation that they just haven't been able to work through yet.
Yeah.
So
And then real quick, just to get back to Chelsea's question, I think we had touched on it a little earlier, but again, when we feel like when it comes to whether if you cheated on, whether or not you stay, it really depends on the situation, whether you're dating, whether you're married, whether this person, like the other person has said in the question, are they truly sorry? Are they actually going to repent and change their ways or not? So there's no one answer, like there's no one size fits all, like some of those book covers that you might buy for your textbooks. Really, each answer would depend on the specific situation. So like, I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but we can't just bucket everything into one big bucket.
yeah. So I think it was maybe the beginning, middle of the slides, Chelsea. We actually
Of
talked about
course.
it.
You're
So just in
welcome.
case you missed it, you can put it back. You can go back to the recording.
Yeah, that's really important.
Yeah.
And then a couple more questions. Did you tell your parents when you started dating?
Juicy question. So for me, I think we didn't get to talk on this today, but I think that every relationship, a lot of success depends on being in a strong community together, especially from a Christian perspective. I think having accountability, people that can help you say when you have issues to help you grow together or point things out that you might not see to each other. So for me, I have a good relationship with my parents. Everyone's relationship with their parents is different, right? But for me, I do have a good relationship with them. I do trust them. They are believers, and I see them also as spiritual counselors as well. And yes, we did tell our parents when we started dating, not just out of honor, because we want to, include them in the big picture as well, and we want to honor the relationships, but also because James and I wanted to seek out counseling from them, surprisingly. And they definitely did not always side with me. It was very much, sometimes they would call me out and tell me I'm the one that's wrong and James is the one that's right, So there was that kind of relationship. It was a little unique, but I think as a general, like over the talking about from a general perspective, we would tell them out of respect for them as well. How to know that he is the right person? Well, these are such good questions. Should we stay here for like another hour? I'm just kidding. No, but how to know he's the right person? I think it kind of goes back to our first point, knowing what you're looking for and what's important to you. I think for me, the first important thing was someone that loves God. And then kind of going down from there, I think that was a big thing. But also, it also goes into having a strong community around me. I also had people that loved me, that knew me, that had the same values as me, like they were believers and Christians. And so because they had that wisdom, they were also people that spoke into my life that said, hey, I think this is a good person for you. Or, hey, I think this could be a really good match. I had one boyfriend before James, and my family, my friends were like, I don't think it's a good match at all. I don't think he's the right one for you. And that was a big thing that helped me know I might just be a little bit too biased in this relationship. And the people that know me and love me, they're speaking into my life. I depends again, your family relationships, how they are, who that community is, but it's really also important to have that community involved as well. When's the best time to start dating, said Alex.
Yeah, I mean, there's no like, okay, when you're 15, you're ready. Or when you're 18,
It's not a number. I think
it's not a
everybody
number.
has an individual journey. I just want to make sure we don't take up too much time, but just some quick thoughts and then you can share. I think it depends on where you are in your maturity. That question James had asked, do you know yourself? Do you know what you're looking for? Where are you in that maturity? If you have like a long list and you're like, I want a person who's kind and smart and works hard, you got to put it back on yourself and say, wait, am I kind? Am I smart? Do I work hard? If you're like, hey, I'm not quite there yet, I feel like I wouldn't necessarily be able to offer the best of myself to a person just yet. Not saying it's too perfect, but maybe you're not necessarily in a healthy place yet. Then I think it's saying, hey, maybe it's still some more time to, continue working on myself, continue growing. And then maybe that's when you can kind of decide more of when you're ready to start a relationship. I think you want to make sure you have a more general sense of self. You don't want to lose yourself in a relationship.
Yeah, I'll say you don't want yourself to become the relationship, because if the relationship ends up breaking up, then you lose a big part of yourself, and that can be very hurtful. So yeah.
And then Gloria says, what should you do if you like someone,
but you're told that you should forget your feelings and like focus on school?
Gloria, did this person tell you to forget your feelings, or did someone else tell you to forget your feelings? Because if they told you to forget your feelings and focus, maybe that's like they're not interested in the relationship. Or is it like your parents or someone else to forget your feelings and like focus on school?
It was more specifically my parents.
That's a good question. That's a good point. You're in 9th grade, right? So you just started high school.
Yeah, something I would say is like having been a high schooler and having had crushes on people, like the feelings are there and they're very strong, and definitely like you can't ignore them. But something now that I'm a couple years older, I kind of realize it's when you're that young, there's
it feels like you're you don't feel young right now, but like as an old 26, I'm like kind of young,
So I think there will be a lot more to yourself that you will learn over time that you don't know yet, right? And some of the things you're looking for will change over the next 2, 5, 10 years. And so I think perhaps like where your parents are coming from is like your education and your school. Those things will help you prepare for a long-term future. And so like there's a trade-off between like how you feel now, but who you'll be in 5 years is very different. And putting all your time in that compared to making sure you at least set aside and make the first priority your education and your future career, so that you
and
can
your character,
so that in the future, right, when you have a job, things are stable, then you can really find someone who is also in the same place that you hopefully have a job, they're stable as well, and you're both more mature. And so then you can pursue.
I think we're not going to be the ones to say, go against your parents, or just, blindly obey them either. We're not going to say either of that. But I think in terms of just processing for yourself and thinking about where you're at, I will say I didn't date anyone in high school. And I actually am glad that I didn't, because I think I saw a lot of friends that dated in high school. And I think either it was distractions in terms from school, or it was just they kind of came out with a lot more hurts because of the immaturity of both parties. And I will say myself, like I knew I was immature back then, and I was dealing with a lot of things, and those boys were also pretty immature too. So I think the way that we would have handled relationships would have been, again, a lot more immature. You might come out with a lot more scars, but there's also such thing as high school sweethearts too, right? So I'm not going to put a blanket statement on that and just say like yes or no, but I think the specific one, it is with your parents. So I think maybe that's more of a conversation to have with them, if you want to talk about whether you're ready or not to date. But I think, at least from my perspective and from James and I's perspective, we do see like the rationale, not saying don't have friendships, but I think in terms of where's your mind, where's all of your time going, definitely glad when we focused on, building up our courage, our character, and just like what direction we want to go in, so that when we're more of our own person, then we know who we are and what we're looking for.
Yeah, there's also the risk that the person you like, they may change a lot over the next 5 years. And so, maybe after like 6 months or a year, maybe that person's gone. And then instead of getting good grades and being able to, better prepare yourself for a job, now you end up with no job and no future spouse as well. So it's just something to keep in mind. Like the person you're dating is also very important, not just
exactly. It's not, we can't say the blanket statement. It's with your parents, so we're not gonna, it's more relationship you have to have with them, like a conversation. But I think just processing, why we would date now, why we would wait is a good standpoint to have. And then last question, everyone's interested. What's the youngest age you can get married? Legally?
Yeah,
Legally?
legally, I think it's 18.
Yeah.
But when we were 18, I didn't.
I would not have been
Yeah.
mature enough to get married. So I think again, it depends. We're not going to say younger than legally, right? But I think it depends on the individual, right? Where you're at in your maturity, where you're at in life, your community around you. Are you, when you get married, you have to think about, are you able to separate from your parents financially, emotionally, and like really become your own family unit? If you're not able to support yourselves as a couple yet in that way, then maybe you want to wait on getting married a little bit, So hope that answers your question. You guys had some really good questions, though. I think this is a fun conversation. We are coming up on 12, so I think we'll wrap it up for today. James, do you want to close in a quick prayer for us?
Of course. Let me think. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for today. I really thank you for giving Alina and I this opportunity to share and to have, to not just talk to these individuals on the call, but also for us to talk with, to have a conversation, to get questions, to answer questions, to get to know them a bit better, God. So thank you for giving us these new friends, these new relationships. And I just ask that for what Alina and I shared today, may you help everyone on this call to be able to take something from it that is helpful, that is a blessing to them, that builds them up, so that as they either continue on their dating journey or look forward to it in the future, that they're able to do so just with more wisdom to be able to avoid troubles and mistakes that would cause them hurt. So just thank you again for this opportunity. I just ask that you work through the sharing to be that it may be a blessing to everyone on this call. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Thanks so much for
All right, thanks
having
so
us,
much.
everyone, and Stephanie.
Yeah. God bless you all. And until we see each other next time. Thank you all for joining us today.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody.
everyone.
Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, Alice. Bye, Phil.